jargon term for today is perspective taking. Oh my goodness. Once you get a handle on what we're talking about with perspective taking, it literally changes your perspective forever and for the better. So let's take a look at what our actual definition is. Perspective taking. It's the ability to perceive someone else's thoughts, feelings, and motivations. Okay, well, what has that got to do with autism? Let's move on to our working definition. Perspective taking is being able to see things from someone else's point of view. You know, I remember when my son was diagnosed and I would see all the Autism Speaks had basically just been formed and there were puzzle pieces everywhere whenever you looked up autism. Puzzle piece, puzzle piece, puzzle piece. And I kept saying, what's with the puzzle piece? And everybody would say to me, well, because there's a piece missing of this puzzle. You know, a lot of times our kids have a lot of skills, but there's a piece missing. And if we could just figure out what that puzzle piece is, they could have an easier time. We could have an easier time treating it. What's the puzzle piece? And I'm always thinking in terms of, all right, what's the piece that helps to put it together so that our kids aren't different than who they are, but have the ability to do all the things that they want to do, right? And for me, a lot of times it comes down to perspective taking. This is one of the key differences that we see in a person who is diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, ASD. You know, there's a great deal of controversy about people who have autism symptoms and people who have the disorder. A disorder is when you cannot function within certain areas of your life and it's disabling for you and frustrating. And what we see a lot of times with an individual who is truly diagnosed with ASD is that this is the cornerstone of our perspective taking. Maybe it presents itself as somebody who doesn't have empathy. So their little sister falls and skins her knee and is bleeding everywhere and is crying. And the person with autism either doesn't notice or is laughing inappropriately because they're not in any pain. So they can't understand that what's happening here is here's this individual, they have pain, so I need to adjust how I'm feeling because of what they're doing. Other times, you know, it can be being unable to resolve conflict because they're not able to see that their opinion of things is not somebody else's opinion of things. When it gets to the point where it's a disorder, then we might be talking about autism spectrum disorder. But here's an interesting thing for you, is that what I have noticed at this point in my journey through autism is that we can teach perspective taking. We can strengthen it. It's like a muscle that we can strengthen if we give enough opportunity and enough feedback, enough reinforcement. We have to go through a very lengthy set of lessons to teach it and then be rewarding those. But I see this on a daily basis with my son and with other people's children and other people's teenagers and adults, that it can be taught. And quite honestly, we're not teaching this to neurotypical kids. And what I see so often now with my son is that his perspective taking has grown to such an extent that it exceeds that of his peers. He is ahead of his peers in terms of being able to look at it from other people's point of view. Not across the board. He's still an 11-year-old boy. There are still places where he misses it. But I would tell you that he gets it a lot more than the 11-year-old boys who are neurotypical. He'll say to me, I'll say, well, you know, what was happening there? And he'll say, well, you know, so-and-so struggles with that, and we need to be patient because it's something that's hard for them. And so I'm just giving them a little space with it. And I go, who are you? And honestly, I've begun to think about this whenever there's any kind of conflict in life, it's usually because there's a lack of perspective taking. I learned that from Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet. And when I, as a person, am having a struggle, a conflict with somebody, when I can stop and say, wait a minute, what is it like in their shoes? I'm going to come at that conflict in a much better way. And it's very fascinating to note who is struggling with perspective taking and how it makes it difficult to communicate with them. And it's not always just individuals with ASD. But when it is an individual with ASD, it can be a huge gap, and we can help them to strengthen it. Perspective taking, it makes a huge difference across a person's entire life.